Greetings, brothers and sisters. Today's lecture is The Revolution of Beelzebub, a wonderful book written by the avatar of the era of Aquarius, the master Samael Aun Weor. Dedication. I dedicate this book to the human beings with will of steel, to the great rebels, to the high-flying eagles, to those who never humble themselves before the whip of any tyrant, to the supermen of humanity, and also to the great repented sinners, since from them a new race of gods will be the outcome. In order to reach the high initiation, one does not need to be an erudite. Instead, what one needs to be is perfect, as our Father who is in heaven is perfect. One does not reach the high initiation with the intellect, but with the heart. Consequently, there are true masters of the white fraternity who do not know how to read, nor to write. Nevertheless, they are great illuminated sages. The intellect never attains the initiation. Only the heart attains the Golgotha of the high initiation. The majority of people have their heads filled with absurd theories and ancestral prejudices. They do not open their minds to anything new. Justice is the supreme piety, and the supreme impiety of the law. The gods judged the great whore, humanity, and they considered her unworthy. Thus, the sentence of the gods is, "To the abyss! To the abyss! To the abyss!" Human beings of the Aquarian age, beings of the 21st century, beings of the 30th century remain firm within the light. Remember that the human beings of the 20th century were barbarians, and that all of them were punished because of their evilness. Let this serve as an example, so that you will remain firm within the faith of Christ. Beings of Aquarius, exert yourselves on your path towards the light. Redeem and fuse yourselves with your intimate, before the evil ones of this 20th century leave the abyss. A new sign of darkness is approaching, Capricorn. Therefore, it is the time for you to be alert and vigilant, because the earth will again be invaded by the demon souls of this dark age, who I, Aun Weor, bound into the abyss in order for you to have the happiness that you are now enjoying. Beings of Aquarius, I especially dedicate to you this book that the barbarians of the 20th century did not understand. People from this 20th century heard the word of Jehovah. Thus saith Jehovah of hosts, even so will I break this people, and this city, as one breaketh a potter's vessel, that cannot be made whole again, and they shall bury them in Tophet, the killing valley, till there be no place to bury. Jeremiah 19 verse 11. Samael Aun Weor. Chapter 1. The Revolution of Beelzebub. Sing unto the majesty of fire, O goddess of wisdom. Let us raise our cups, and let us toast to the hierarchies of the flames. Let us ignite our amphoras of gold, and let us drink the wine of light, until becoming inebriated. O Demosthenes, how fast were your feet in Chaeronea! Mesmer, Cagliostro, Agrippa, Raymond Lully, I knew all of you, I saw all of you, and they called you madmen. From where did you get your wisdom? Why were your lips sealed with death? What did happen to your knowledge? On this night, I will drink the wine of wisdom within the chalice of your august craniums, and in a gesture of omnipotent rebellion, I will revolt against the ancient tomb. I will break all the chains of the world, and I will declare myself immortal, even if they believe me to be crazy. I will grasp the sword of Damocles, so as to make the inopportune guest to flee. Thus, mute skull, you will not succeed against me, since I am eternal. Igneous Christ, blazing Christ, I raise my cup and make a toast to the gods, but you baptize me with fire. From where did this manifold creation spring from? From where did these immense planetary boulders spring from that seem to emerge as millenarian monsters from the jaws of an abyss, in order to fall into yet another abyss more terrible and dreadful than the first? I lift my eyes up high, and upon the igneous head of the most exalted among all the sacrificed ones, I read this word, INRI. Ignis natura renovator integra. The fire renews nature incessantly. Yes, beloved disciples, the entire universe is nothing else but the granulations of the Fohat, fire. Oh, the hierarchies of the fires! Oh, the hierarchies of the flames! Ardent, ardent roses. Igneous serpents. Hiss eternally upon the waters of life, in order for the worlds to emerge. Hiss eternally, with the hiss of the Fohat, O holy flames. Blessed be the luminous fiat, the spermatic fiat of the eternal living God, who placed this universe into existence. Divine fire, you are the divine numen of all infinite existences, and when the subterranean flame shall burst its prison and devour the framework, burning the foundations of the world, you shall still be as you were before, without suffering any change. O divine and eternal fire! The Fohat fecundates the chaotic matter, thus, the worlds emerge into existence. All of what has been, what is, and what will be, is a child of fire. The fire of the Holy Spirit is the flame of Horeb. The Fohat lives within our testicles, ovaries, and it is only a matter of putting it into activity, by means of sexual magic, that will convert ourselves into gods, into devas, into divine and ineffable beings. The fire of chastity is the fire of the Holy Spirit, it is the fire of Pentecost, it is the fire of Kundalini. It is the fire which Prometheus plundered from heaven. It is the sacred flame of the temple, ignited by the Vestals. It is the flame of triple incandescence. It is the chariot of fire on which Elijah went up into heaven. In the time of ancient Egypt, the neophyte who aspired to become an alchemist had to wed a mature woman in order to awaken the divine fire. But if he married a young maiden, he had to wait some months before executing the sexual connection. Obedience to his wife was one of the matrimonial requirements, to which the alchemist was subduing to with great gladness. To introduce the virile member into the feminine vagina, and to withdraw it without spilling the semen, is the old formulae of ancient alchemists. This is the formula to awaken the igneous serpent, and to achieve the union with the intimate. According to Moses, the intimate is the real being, the Ruach Elohim, who was sowing the waters in the beginning of the world. This is how we convert ourselves into the Sun King, into the triumphant Magi of the snake. We become omnipotent gods, and with the sword of Damocles we defeat death. All of nature kneels before us, and the tempests serve as carpets for our feet. Fohat is the elixir of long life. We can preserve the body for millions of years with this elixir. The woman is the vestal of the temple. The woman lights the flame of our sounding archwin, which vibrates within the cosmic spaces with the tremendous solemn and ineffable euphoria of the vast heavens of Urania. Woman, I love thee. It has been many nights that I weep dearly, dearly. But at the end of the journey I hear thy songs, and the dreaming stars tremble with love. Then the celestial muses kiss themselves with thy chants. Thou art a sealed book of 7 seals. I do not know if thou art joy or venom. I am at the edge of an abyss, which I do not understand. I feel fear of thee and of thy mystery. Woman, I adore thee. I want to drink the mandrake's liquor, I want to kiss thy bosom. I want to feel the chant of thy words, and I want to ignite my fires. Woman, thou cannot forget me, thou told me that thou loves me. And thou swore to me thy love, in those adored nights. In those nights of idol. In those perfumed nights. Nights of chants and nests. Old priestess, ignite my wick, ignite my flame of triple incandescence. Nuble vestal of a divine temple. Deliver to me the fruits of science. By Samael Aun Weor. Chapter 2. The Arcadia. Who is that young man with a grayish tunic, black and profound eyes, hawk nose, tall body and tousled mane? Who is that joyful young man who laughs happily while in social gatherings with friends, who is broad-minded and blissful in an orgy? Ah, he is Beelzebub, the king of parties, the simpatico friend of taverns, the joyful friend of orgies, the romantic, handsome, broad-minded man from ancient Arcadia. I have clairvoyantly penetrated into the epoch of Saturn. I do not see anything vague or vaporous here, as Besant, Leadbeater, Handel, and Steiner asserted. What of their powers? What of their knowledge? Why did they speak to me of vague things, when everything that I see here is concrete and exact? These human beings of the epoch of Saturn were human, true humans, because they had a being and they knew that this being was within them. Humanities are always analogous, and these human beings of the epoch of Saturn were like the present human beings, with a similar environment. When speaking of humanity, what may come into our minds is business, taverns, brothels, orgies, beautiful, frivolous maidens and handsome suitors, abducted princesses and ancient castles, neighboring sweethearts and nighthawk poets, an elder who passes by and a child who cries, a mother who sings a lullaby of hope, or a monk who murmurs a prayer. To that end, the whole gamut of qualities, the various and diverse defects, are what constitute the human values. Humanity is a womb where angels and demons are gestated. Therefore, the only outcome of humanity is nothing else but angels and demons. There is no danger when the divine monads are animating the three inferior kingdoms. Danger exists when they arrive to the human kingdom, because from this human state the angel, or the demon, is the only outcome. Beelzebub was a great rebel who shook his head and his tousled mane amidst the cups and delights of Arcadia. He had longings for wisdom, but his rebel eagle wings did not fit among the parochial rabble. His tremendous and fierce verb, with its magnificent and luminous proverbs, disturbed the imbeciles and unmasked the traitors. The fire of eternity was burning within his soul, and a scream of rebellion was shaking his titanic innermost parts. Yet, he was enjoying all kinds of commodities, and he was abiding in a comfortable and luxurious house of Arcadia, which was his rebel eagle's nest. All was of a mental matter. All of the human beings were using astral bodies. They ate, dressed, drank, and were enjoying themselves like in this present time, because the astral body is an organism almost as dense as the physical. Thus, it was analogously constituted as the physical body. Certainly, these human beings of Arcadia were remembering ancient cataclysms and beautiful millenarian traditions from pre-Saturnine epochs, but within the complete apogee of the human state, life was similar to that of the present time. Small, festive parties of happy comrades, pale fires, and liquors of mandrake, nights of revelry and orgy, nights of carnival, romances of love and poetry, that are better not to remember, maidens of brunette chaste, who fall upon arms, and who are weightless as the wind, with those raiments of satin. Chapter 3. White Magic and Black Magic. There are 7 truths, 7 sublime lords, and 7 secrets. The secret of the abyss is one of the 7 great unutterable secrets. Abaddon is the angel of the abyss. He wears a black tunic and a red cap, like those worn by the Dugpa and Bons from the Oriental Tibet, and from the regions of Sikkim and Bhutan, also as worn by the black magicians from the altar of Mathura, pronounced Mazra by the Rosicrucian school AMORC from California. Red cap magicians are also the venerable Anagarikas. To that end, all of these black magicians are the great hierarchies from the tenebrous caverns. One thing is theurgy and another thing is necromancy. The internal master of the theurgist is the intimate. The internal master of the necromancer is his guardian of the threshold, to whom they call the guardian of their consciousness, the guardian of the precinct, the guardian of their chamber, the guardian of their sanctum. The intimate is our divine spirit, our real being, our internal angel. The guardian of the threshold is the internal depth of our animal eye. The intimate is the ardent flame of Horeb. In accordance with Moses, the intimate is the Ruach Elohim, who was sowing the waters in the beginning of the world. He is the Sun King, our divine monad, the alter ego of Cicerone. The guardian of the threshold is our Satan, our internal beast, the source of all of our animal passions and brutal appetites. The real being of the theurgist is the intimate. The superior eye of the necromancer is the guardian of the threshold. The powers of the intimate are divine. The powers of the guardian of the threshold are diabolic. The theurgist worships the intimate. The necromancer worships the guardian of the threshold. The theurgist avails himself with the power of his intimate in order to perform his great works of practical magic. The necromancer worships the guardian of the threshold for his works of black magic. We have arrived at the omnipotent empire of high and low magic. The astral light is the battlefield between white and black magicians. The astral light is the clue of all empires and the key of all powers. It is the great universal agent of life. All the columns of angels and demons live within the astral light. In order to attain theurgy, one firstly needs to be an alchemist, and it is impossible to be an alchemist without a spouse. Vitriol is one of the clues of the Gnostic alchemist. The word signifies Visitum interiorem terra rectificatum invenias occultum lapidum. Visit the interior of the earth, which through rectifying you will find the occult stone. The clue is found within the flexible and malleable liquid glass. This liquid glass is the semen. Therefore, we have to sink ourselves within our own organic laboratory to increase, to rectify our liquid glass, with the goal of heroically expanding the philosophical stone, the force of nous, the immortal logos, the solar snake, which sleeps with silent inquietude within the bottom of our ark. The woman is the vestal of the temple. The vestal is the one who ignites the sacred fire of triple incandescence. The elixir of long life is the potable gold, and that potable gold is the semen. The secret is to sexually connect oneself with the priestess wife, and withdraw from her without spilling the semen. IAO, each letter requires a complete inhalation into our lungs. One completely fills his lungs and vocalizes the first vowel, then one completely fills his lungs again, and pronounces the second vowel, and likewise the third. This must be performed mentally in cases when the priestess wife is not prepared, in order to avoid wrong interpretations from her behalf. The Kundalini awakens with this clue. We finally attain the marriage of nous, and we conquer the beautiful Helen, the one for whom all the illustrious warriors of ancient Troy fought for. The beautiful Helen is the igneous mind of the soul who is already betrothed to her eternal beloved, to her intimate. The beautiful Helen is the ardent mind of the theurgist. The theurgist transmutes the lead into real and permanent gold. The theurgist grasps the sword and is a king of nature. He resurrects the dead, heals the blind, the crippled and paralytics. He unleashes the hurricanes and heroically walks through the fiery gardens of nature. What inductive or deductive logic serves as a foundation for the Neoplatonic Plotinus and Porphyrius in order to combat the phenomenon of theurgy? All of the infinite existences of the universe are children of the phenomenon of theurgy. There exists an enormous difference between the mirror of theurgy and the mirror of necromancy. The mirror of Eleusis is different than the mirror of Sodom. The mirror of the school of Sodom is necromancy and black magic. The mirror of the mysteries of Eleusis is pure and divine theurgy. The initiate of Eleusis, while in the state of mantia, ecstasy, was pronouncing the sacred syllable. Then, the initiate's intimate was appearing with light and beauty within the resplendent mirror. Many times the initiate was provoking the state of mantia when drinking from the chalice of soma. He was thus transported into the ineffable pleroma of love. The necromancer of the school of Sodom begs the guardian of the threshold to appear in the mirror. Once the vision appears, the candidate becomes a slave of the guardian of the threshold, and is converted into a black magician. The ritual of first degree of the school of Sodom is the most monstrous crime ever committed against humanity. While staring in the mirror, the disciple invokes the monster of the threshold with these following questions that he asks to himself. 1. Do you want to know the mystery of your being? 2. Would you like to know the terror of the threshold? 3. Would you listen to the voice that answers? 4. Did you ever hear the consciousness? 5. Do you know that the consciousness is the internal voice that speaks when it has an opportunity to do so? 6. Would you give the consciousness the freedom of speaking to you? 7. Do you know that the consciousness is your guardian, and therefore the guardian of this sanctum? 8. And do you know that this sacred guardian will always be present in this sanctum in order to guide you and protect you? These questions are asked by the naive disciple, and after reciting some other paragraphs of black magic before the mirror, he says, "Before my brethren and lords, and in the presence of the guardian of the sanctum, I declare that I have approached the terror of the threshold, and that I do not have terror for my soul. Now I am a dweller of the threshold. I have been purified, and I have commanded my true I, the guardian of the threshold, to exercise dominion over my physical body and mind." This is how the naive disciple remains converted into a black magician, into a slave of the guardian of the threshold and of the darkness. This ritual of black magic, adapted for this 20th century, is very ancient. Beelzebub started his horrible career as a demon after having performed it in ancient Arcadia. In 1387, with just reason, the Tibetan reformer Tsongkhapa cast every book of necromancy that he found into flames. As a result, some discontent lamas formed an alliance with the aboriginal Bons, and today they form a powerful sect of black magic in the regions of Sikkim, Bhutan and Nepal. submitting themselves to the most abominable black rites. Jamblichus, the great theurgist, said, "Theurgy unites ourselves more strongly with divine nature. This nature is engendered by itself and acts in accordance with its own powers. It is intelligent and sustains everything. It is the ornament of the universe, and invites us to the intelligent truth, to perfection, and to share this perfection with others. It unites us so intimately to all the creative acts of the gods, in proportion to the capacity of each one of us. After accomplishing these sacred rites, the soul is consolidated within the actions of the intelligence of the gods, until identifying itself with them. Thus it is absorbed by the primeval and divine essence. Such is the object of the sacred initiations of the Egyptians. Jamblichus was invoking and materializing the planetary gods. Firstly, one becomes an alchemist, then a magician, and finally a theurgist. We awaken the snake and become theurgists by practicing sexual magic. The whole secret resides in learning how to sexually connect ourselves with our spouse and to withdraw without spilling the semen, reaching the orgasm. Naked dances, sexual magic, and delectable music were something ineffable in the mysteries of Eleusis. The Gnostic Church has opened its doors to all of humanity, and the mission of diffusing the snake's wisdom unto this suffering humanity has been granted to me, Samael Aun Weor. The word mantia in the ancient mysteries of Eleusis means ecstasy. Eleusis. Mantia, mantia, mantia. The music of the temple inebriates me with its delectable chant, and its sacred dance. And the exotic priestesses dance with the impetuous frenzy of fire distributing light and smiles in that corner of paradise. Mantia, mantia, mantia. And the serpent of fire, amongst the august marble, is the princess of the sacred purple. It is the virgin of very ancient castles. It is Hadith, the winged serpent, engraved on the ancient roads of granite. Like a terrific and adored goddess, like a genie of an ancient monolith, in the body of the gods entwined. And I saw in festival nights delectable princesses on their births, and the silent muse was smiling on the altars, among the perfumes and silk. Mantia, 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 shouted the Vestals, filled with a crazy, divine frenzy. And silently looking at them were the gods immortal, under the porches of Alabrastine. Kiss me, my love, look at me, I love you. And a whisper of delectable words were shaking the sacred arcanum, among music and roses, of that sacred sanctuary. Go dance, exotic dancers of Eleusis, among the jingle of your tiny bells, Magdalenes of Via Crucis, divine priestesses. Chapter 4. The Two Ways. Behold, I set before you the way of life, and the way of death. Jeremiah 2:1-8. The bewitching flower of crime grows by the shadow of liquor and the orgy. The wild vermin and the writhing reptile make their nest by the shadow of the nubile foliage of passion. In the middle of all the revelry and the bacchanalia, Beelzebub learned to gamble with a great amount of money. In reality, money and the original sin are coexistential, both are the tragedy of the human. Gambling has driven the elegant lady and the cunning gentleman, as well as the working man and the bohemian gambler, to ruin and suicide. Beelzebub learned the vice of gambling, and he laughed happily while in the bacchanalia, amidst the bare sound of the dice and the happy and triumphant pop of another bottle. Yet, lo and behold, a mysterious personage was never absent within the orgy. This ominous personage with a sinister face was wearing a black tunic of Arcadian style, and great rings of gold were always shining in his ears. What mystery was surrounding this sinister personage? Was he perhaps a genie of the light who came from remote spheres? Was he perhaps some luminous lord of the flame, or some ancient inhabitant from some historical epoch already ended? No, nothing of the sort. This man was only a horrible and monstrous transgressor of the law, a black magician. Beelzebub learned certain clues from this black magician in order to win in the vice of gambling. Their friendship was mingled with thankfulness and orgies. Thus, this sinister personage was conducing his victim throughout the black path. The human beings of the epoch of Saturn were using astral bodies, and they were tall in stature. At that time, our actual human bodies were only germs, which had the possibility of unfolding. The present human intimates, spirits, were just virginal sparks who were animating the mineral kingdom. But Beelzebub was a human being of that epoch, because he had a being, and he knew that this being was within him. If Beelzebub had followed the narrow and straight way, which leads towards the light, he then would have become a lord of the mind, a son of the fire, like his most beloved friends. However, liquor, pleasure, gambling and fornication with its exotic flowers of malignant and seductive beauty were hypnotizing the weak and taking him into the abyss. This is how Beelzebub became an intimate friend of this sinister personage, who with his miraculous clues was leading him triumphantly in the vice of gambling. Sadly enough, one day Beelzebub was finally prepared in order to receive the first initiation of black magic within a tenebrous temple. His master had made ineffable promises to him. He spoke to him a lot of love and justice, therefore doubting him was impossible, especially when he was always guiding him triumphantly with his marvelous secrets in the vice of gambling. Likewise, in this day and age, how can the students of the school of Sodom doubt the imperator of their sacred order, or of their holy rituals? The one who is going to fall does not see the gap. The ritual of the first tenebrous initiation, that the disciple Beelzebub received in the temple, is the same first ritual that the students of AMORC perform today in their room in order to receive their first degree. Thus, in the same way that the student of first degree from Sodom remains enslaved by the guardian of the threshold after the rite, as well Beelzebub remained enslaved by the guardian of the threshold. This is how he started his career as a demon. What occurs is that during the ordinary hours of sleep veritas, the black guru takes the disciples of first black degree in astral body and submits them to a very curious rite, which we will now observe. The disciple goes sporadically around a table a few times, he strikes it, then he receives a brick from the hands of the initiator, who ceremoniously pronounces these words, "Underneath the devil, do not forget it." Afterwards, the disciple buries the brick under the ground. This ceremony symbolizes that the poor disciple has laid the foundation for his black fellowship, and that he now has to obey the commands of the black fraternity. Afterwards, certain occult treatments are made upon the principal chakras of the head of this naive victim, with the goal of controlling him for the service of the Black Brotherhood. Also, a lens in a form of an eye is placed upon his neck, in order to influence him over the important centers of his subconsciousness. When the disciple awakes upon his bed, he does not bring back any memory of what happened in the astral plane. The black magicians have their mysticism, and they always firmly believe that they walk on the good path. No black magician believes that he walks on the evil path. The path of black magic is a broad way filled with vices and pleasures. Mariella, the great female black magician, was filled with a delectable and fatal beauty. With her enchanting voice and tender face, she was agilely and weightlessly slithering upon the soft, thick carpets of the great and splendid halls of the oldest aristocratic lineage of the European nobility. Her seductive voice was resounding in the party like a poem of love, like a kiss from the shadows, like ineffable music. She was something like the romance of a symphony of Beethoven. She was Mariella, the great black magician, the splendid lady of all the European courts. The 70 souls of the cauldron, with their gray hair, were resembling something like a garden of white daisies among perfume, silk, and the swallow-tailed coats of the royal palaces. They were the 70 souls of the cauldron, a garden of white flowers, which were blown by a breath of death. The testament of the 70 Hellenes was a testament of darkness and death. What about you, Angela? That royal vesture with a long gown makes you look like the longed-for fiancé of a lover who never arrives. You look like a mysterious nymph of a delectable enchanted labyrinth. You look like an unforgettable beauty within the velvety night strewn with stars. How many times I saw you, O Angela, like a fatal goddess amongst the bewitched mirrors of that elegant hall of witchcraft, where you were a queen of evil. What is the name, O children of evil, of that splendid mansion which is similar to an idol? Ah, it is Javasimo, the delectable hall of purple and silk. Fatal love and the beauty of the abyss of evil only reign there, and every maiden is a poem, every smile an idol, and every dance a romance of an unforgettable love. The limber and delicate waist of every malignant beauty is a bayadir within the silhouette of a mysterious landscape. Andromlech, the wealthy and pompous black magician of China, says that the human being is an angel, therefore, he does not need to suffer. He always advises his friends to enter into the aristocracy, to dress like princes, and to collect a lot of money. The Black K.H., when talking about social matters, says that his disciples must be triumphant, and that the disciple who is not triumphant cannot be his disciple. The black magicians love fornication, and in order to justify themselves, they say such is a divine relationship. The black magicians greatly know that the souls who move away from their intimates eventually disintegrate themselves into the abyss. This is why a spokesman from the teachings of the Brothers of the Tenebrous Caverns says that the soul is just a vesture, and that it must be disintegrated, because they only have interest in their real being, and that they long for the construction of their hiding place in the absolute. This is the dangerous mysticism of black magic. Any neophyte in occult science will easily fall into this philosophy of a terribly malignant and seductive beauty. The black magicians hate the Christ, and they consider him an evil personage. They say that the Lord Christ was not an initiate, because no initiate allows himself to be killed. With this philosophy of darkness is how the black magicians elaborate their mysticism, and filled with rejoicing, they drink, cohabit, and enjoy themselves. They assist in their great festivities, and delectably dance in their elegant halls, while enjoying and laughing in the arms of fornication. The black path is easy and open. So Beelzebub, the handsome and simpatico gallant of ancient Arcadia, was oriented in this easy and happy path. Straight is the gate, and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto light, and few there be that find it. The path which leads unto light is filled with caltrops and thorns. Many are called and few are chosen. Matthew 7 verse 13. Therefore, the majority of souls in our terrestrial evolution are lost. The black path, filled with vices and pleasures, was the easier and more accessible path for all of them. The human evolution has failed. Only a handful of souls will be united with their intimate, and will enter into the angelical kingdom. The majority of human souls will disintegrate themselves into the abyss throughout the centuries and eons, within the exterior darkness, and the weeping and gnashing of teeth. Christ, the divine Redeemer of the world, came in order to publicly open the initiatic path for all of humanity. The whole Via Crucis of the divine Rabbi of Galilee is the path of the initiation, that the initiate must walk on to go towards the Golgotha of high initiation. Once there, the soul is united with its intimate and immortalizes itself, and reaches the ineffable souls of Pleroma. The lethargy of impenetrable centuries weigh upon the august and sacred mysteries. The Verb made flesh lies in the bottom of our sacred ark, awaiting for the supreme moment of our resurrection. The holy doctrine of the Savior of the world shines with the luminous and spermatic fiat of the first instant, and the rod of Aaron remains waiting for the footsteps of the snake. The Holy Gnostic Church is the zealous guardian of Pistis Sophia, which is the book in which all of the teachings of the divine Rabbi of Galilee are found written. The very ancient and painful path through which all of the masters of humanity have walked shines with resplendence in the bottom of all ages. Chapter 5. The Staff of the Patriarchs. Beelzebub, each time more anxious for wisdom, was faithfully and sincerely accomplishing all of the commands which his sinister instructor was giving to him. He knew the course of his seminal currents, and he awoke his kundalini negatively through the procedures of fornication and concentration, as taught by necromancy. The twilight of the cosmic night was extending the velvet of its mysterious wings over the profound valleys, and over the enormous and gigantic mountains of ancient Arcadia. The corpulent, millenarian trees, the last offspring from unknown parents, had already seen their autumn leaves falling during many long years, but now they seemed to definitively wither in order to fall into the arms of death. Our current human bodies were in those times resembling human phantoms, and the intimates of our present humanity had already received their more fine vesture. Terrible earthquakes were shaking Arcadia, and everywhere a breath of death was sensed. From the enormous multitude of human beings, two types of creatures were the outcome: angels and demons. The ancient beauty of Beelzebub, the handsome gallant of Arcadia, had disappeared. His body was covered with hair, and he took on the resemblance of a gorilla. His eyes took on the criminal and horrible aspect of a bull. His mouth became gigantic and presented as a snout of a voracious beast with its horrible teeth. His head with an enormous mane, his deformed and gigantic feet and hands gave him the aspect of a horrible, corpulent, and enigmatic monster. This was Beelzebub, the enigmatic and handsome gallant of ancient Arcadia. Was this the cup of wisdom from which he had wanted to drink from? In order to reach such horrible monstrosity, did he have to pass all of those sacred initiations in the temple? Was this the nectar of science or the liquor of wisdom, which he was longing for? Wisdom, divine treasure. Thou burns me with thy fire. When I want to cry, I do not. And if I do, thou consoles me. There was an old woodsman of the country, who did not know how to read nor write. He only loved the edge of his axe, yet he felt a longing for life. He was watering the furrows with his tears, while feeling love for wisdom. His pale cheeks were smiling, when he inebriated himself with love and poetry. Wisdom, wisdom, wisdom. How much thou burns me! Exclaimed the agonizing elder under the blonde stars. Wisdom, liquor of gods, is a liquor which poisons. Thus, in a very hard way my spirit will come. Terrible, O God of mine, is this torture of waiting. Wisdom, for thee I raise my cup, since I am tired of crying. Wisdom, to thee I chant my strophes, and await within the roses the love that must come. Wisdom, divine treasure. Thou bums me with thy fire. When I want to cry, I do not. And if I do, thou consoles me. Thus, the Kundalini awakened in a negative way and converted Beelzebub into a tenebrous potency of nature. During passionate fornication, the black magicians take advantage of the moment of seminal ejaculation by means of mental concentration. This is done in order to exert the ascension of the vitalizing hormones that are segregated by the sexual glands towards the head. Then, with their mind, they take the hormones into the heart, which then sends them towards the fat toe of the right foot. This is how they awake their Kundalini in a negative way, and they convert themselves into a monster with 7 heads, which the Book of Revelation, Apocalypse, refers to. There exist schools of black yoga in India, which instruct their disciples in that tenebrous science. We can reduce all of the profound studies of occultism into one synthesis, the serpent. If we spill the semen, reach the orgasm, then we convert ourselves into devils, and if we do not spill it, we then convert ourselves into angels. If the serpent ascends, then we are gods, but if the serpent descends, then the tail of the demon is formed in us, and we become demons. The tail of the demon, the condartiguator, is a prolongation of the astral counterpart of the coccyx, and is the result of the movement of the serpent, downwards, towards the earth. The Kundalini is the staff of the patriarchs, the rod of Aaron, the reed of Brahma, and the scepter of the gods. The Gnostic alchemist awakes the Kundalini through the practicing of sexual magic. Thus, the Kundalini ascends through a conduct, which is in a canal called Sushumna. This igneous serpent is thick in those who have accumulated a lot of crystonic substance, semen, but it is thin in those who have not stored a lot of sexual energy. The positive awakening of the Kundalini is accompanied by a great festivity within the temple. Terrible pain is produced in the coccyx. Afterwards, the serpentine fire opens its way upwards, towards the head. The passing from one canon into another is performed in accordance with the moral merits of the disciple. These canons are the vertebrae of the spinal column. They are also called pyramids. Any unworthy action takes the Kundalini of that disciple out from one or more canons, in accordance with the magnitude of the fault. There are 33 canons that we must conquer in order to reach the high initiation, that is, the union with the intimate. These 33 canons belong to the 33rd degree of Masonry. They relate also to the 33 years of the life of Christ. Thus, the 33rd degree is only acquired by the masters of major mysteries. The 2 threes, when united, are the symbol of the union of the matter with the spirit, the perfect circle of eternity, whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. The high initiation is performed when the Kundalini has already reached the head, But in order for the Kundalini to triumphantly rise through the 33 canons, it is necessary to practice in detail all of the teachings of the Holy Gospels. In order to reach the high initiation, we must first pass the 9 arcades, that is to say, the 9 initiations of lesser mysteries. All of the powers of the human being are awakened according to the ascension of the serpentine fire through the spinal column, since each canon has its occult name, and is related with specific powers. A certain master of major mysteries said that before reaching the high initiation, he had the weakness of falling into a certain fault, therefore his Kundalini descended 4 canons. Consequently, in order to reconquer them again, he had to struggle very much. The ordeals of initiation are extremely severe. The disciple has to follow a perfect, holy and chaste path. Thus, when reaching the intimate, the human being becomes converted into a master of major mysteries and into a theurgist. Chapter 6. I accuse. After a period of cosmic repose, before the start of the solar epoch, life recapitulated the Saturnine epoch. Then afterwards, the solar epoch began. The earth was shining with resplendence with the ineffable colors of the astral light, and the matter of the universe was the same astral light. The physical bodies of our present humanity were developed a little more, and these bodies received the vital body, which in the present time serves as a foundation for the whole human biology. The angels and demons of the Saturnine epoch were floating in the environment of the solar epoch. Here we clairvoyantly see Beelzebub, the prince of demons, surrendered to the worst crimes, an active member of a great temple of black magic. He was intensely struggling in order to make proselytes among the humanity of the solar epoch. Consequently, there were many souls who he conquered for his tenebrous temple. Beelzebub descended the 13 steps of black magic, thus achieving the 13th black initiation, which converted him into a prince of demons. He was wearing around his waist the sinister cord of 7 knots, which is worn by adepts of black magic. He became skillful in mind control, and received the lost word of the black magicians, which is written Mathram, and which they pronounce Mazram. He placed upon his head of long hair the cap of black magic, and covered his wide and hairy shoulders with the black cape of the Prince of Demons. Upon his forehead appeared the horns of the devil. These horns are the mark of the beast. He became familiar with all the passwords and converted himself into a great hierarch of the Black Lodge, into a left-handed adept. The black magicians have some very curious passwords in order to recognize each other. Arco is the password for those of 2nd degree. Kyra is the word for those of 3rd degree, which they pronounce Kaira. Mathra is the password for those of 4th degree, which they pronounce Mazra, and which is the lost word for the black magicians. Mathra is the name of a temple of black magic. Such a temple is situated in Jinn state over the mountain of Pico, or Pico's mountain, on the Azores Islands. The black magicians from the altar of Mathra are magicians of red cap, as are the Bons and Dugpa from Tibet. The black rituals of this day and age come from this tenebrous Atlantean temple, and not from Egypt as they falsely claim. Samael Aun Weor, the very ancient hierophant of Egyptian mysteries, accused the Black Lodge before the verdict of the public consciousness of the crime of fraudulence. I accuse this black institution of the crime of attributing to us, the ancient Egyptians, the rituals of black magic, which we never used in Egypt. I accuse the Black Lodge of the crime of profanation. I accuse the Black Lodge of making merchandise of the souls of men. I accuse the Black Lodge before the verdict of the public consciousness of the horrendous fraud of making their naive disciples believe their institution to be white. People of America, rise as a single individual in order to once and for all end those dens of corruption, which are leading millions of souls into the abyss. Brave people, heroic people, the hour of the great revolution has arrived, and there is no time to waste. The hour of the great decisions has arrived, and we, all human beings, must reunite ourselves around the divine Rabbi of Galilee, who from the summits of Golgotha exclaims, my Lord, how hast thou glorified me?" The black magicians of the 5th degree will scream their password Astro in vain, because that den of black magic will sink into the abyss, where the great beast and the false prophet abide. The horrible victims of the 6th degree will scream Zokas in vain, because the edge of the sword of cosmic justice will seal their throats within the horrible darkness of desperation, where only weeping and the gnashing of teeth are heard. What about you, black mystics of the 7th degree? In vain you will burn the witch's salt with alcohol and incense. The filthy guardian of your sanctum will be incapable of saving you from the darkness and desperation, because the millennium has arrived, and all of them who are not near to Christ will go into the abyss, even if they scream Mathrem, Mathrem, Mathrem as madmen. Chapter 7. The Adam Noose. Beelzebub, the prince of demons, was expanding the lines of his legions with new proselytes, which he daily recruited among the human beings of the solar epoch. In this way he converted himself into a hierarch of legions. Filled with an ineffable beauty, the universe was resplendently shining. The humanity from the solar epoch was similar to the humanities of any epoch. There was one among the human beings of that epoch who was tremendously struggling in order to attain perfection. This man was later known as Christ, the divine rabbi of Galilee, the solar Logos. There was another temple of black magic in the solar epoch in which many human beings were initiated. They were later converted into demons. Astaroth was initiated in that black and gigantic temple. When the cosmic night of the solar epoch approached after millions of years, the 4 lords of flame endowed the present human intimates, spirits, with a spiritual soul, or Buddhic body, which is the body of intuition. The vehicle of intuition is directly connected with the heart. Accordingly, the heart is the center of intuition. Its chakra or lotus flower spins and shines with extraordinary beauty. 7 atomic centers exist in this chakra, which serve as instruments for the 7 great cosmic hierarchies in order for them to act upon our marvelous organism. As we have already stated in our book entitled The Perfect Matrimony, or The Door Entering into the Initiation, the heart of the sun is constructed like the heart of our human organism. Just as 7 hierarchs exist in the sun who direct the 7 cosmic rays, also 7 brains exist in our heart, which belong to the 7 great cosmic hierarchies. The sun has an atomic central nucleus, which is the Adam Noose, and is the dwelling of Brahma within us. This atom is the first vital center, which functions in the fetus, and also the last one which stops living in our organism. This atom contains the mind, life, energy, and willpower of the human being. It has an opal-like luminous aura, which irradiates and shines. At the end of the solar epoch, the humanity of that epoch attained the angelic state. They are the archangels of present times. The highest initiate among them was Christ. But not all of the human beings of that epoch reached that state, since the majority converted themselves into demons. Jav is the contrary pole of Christ. Jav was the highest black and tenebrous initiate of that epoch. When the cosmic night arrived, then the universe seemed to submerge itself into the chaos. All of nature entered into a happy dream. The seeds of all living things delivered themselves into the arms of dreams. Thus, the harps of the Elohim were delectably vibrating within the infinite spaces. Chapter 8. The Mind and the Intuition. The intellectual man lives in his head with its 7 portals. The brain is made in order to elaborate thought, yet it is not thought. The brain is nothing else but an instrument of the mental body. The mental body is a material organism, yet it is not the physical organism. The mental body has its ultrabiology and its internal pathology, which is completely unknown to the present men of science. The mental body is enveloped by a silken membrane, which protects it and keeps it in line with the cerebrum spinal nervous system. This covering is the silver shield of the mental body. Such a shield is completely covered by certain truncated cones. These are called modules, which are the senses of the mental body. One among these sensorial centers of the mental body permits this body to manipulate the individual and universal seminal currents. There also exists in our mental body certain senses, which allow us to receive the wisdom from distinct stars. The lower counterpart of our shield forms the convolutions of the brain. The mental body has an atomic nucleus, which serves as its base. Such a nucleus is the master atom of the mind. This master atom contains the whole wisdom of nature. Whosoever learns how to be in communication with such an atom through meditation will be taught and instructed upon the cosmic wisdom, since this atom is a sage. This master atom resides in our seminal system. By practicing sexual magic, this atom rises towards our head and then illuminates us in the world of the mind. The silver shield shines like gold when we practice sexual magic, because millions of transformation atoms of high voltage cover it and totally transform it. Hence, the awakening of the consciousness and the aristocracy of intelligence truly arrive. Then, indeed, we can talk of having mental erudition and transformable ethics. How can we talk of human sublimation, current achievement, and of immediate results without possessing solid mental erudition? Are perhaps the intimate existent relationships between sexuality and the mind known? The psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud should be studied in order to know the first notions of sexuality in relation with the mind. Some believe that by playing sports, riding horses, or by selecting other sensations, they will get that which pompously is called the most new conceptions, mental erudition, aristocracy of intelligence, and spiritual rebirth. How can an individual degenerate by the morbidity of carnal passion talk of having a methodical life and complete attention? How can an individual whose mental body still has not been transformed by the transformation atoms talk about associations of ideas and of longings? How can someone who has yet to have the master atom on his throne talk of having mental expansion? How can the oversexed person talk of having a creative mind? Do they not know that the thoughts which are not penetrated by the determinative energy of nature, sexual energy, become disintegrated? Do they ignore that the determinative energy is the sexual force? How can an individual whose pineal gland is atrophied because of fornication talk of having courage, willpower, and triumph? Is it perhaps that the intimate existent relationship between the pineal gland and the sexual glands is unknown, and also because the pineal gland is the messenger of the center of thought? How can an individual whose brain is weakened because of the vice of coitus talk of mental concentration? How can an individual who has not re-encountered himself and who has become far away from his intimate due to black magic talk about personal satisfaction and of being sufficient in oneself? How can a weak soul be sufficient in oneself? Did they not realize that the souls who are far away from the intimate are weak souls? The mind is divided into the concrete mind and the abstract mind. One thing is the critic of practical reasoning, and another is the critic of pure reasoning. The contextual concepts which belong to the critic of practical reasoning are based upon experiences of external sensorial perceptions. Yet, the contextual concepts which belong to the critic of pure reasoning are nourished with prompt ideas and intuition. The philosophy of Mr. Immanuel Kant, the great philosopher from Königsberg, is totally ignored. Therefore, the systems of control and of selection of sensations only yearn for enslaving the disciples of the critic of practical reasoning and the disciples of the inferior mind and concrete mind. Those systems are nothing else but pure and legitimate black magic. The desired outcome of such systems is to convert the disciple into a slave of the exterior sensations and into a black magician. The Brahmavidya is the mind of the intimate. The mind of the intimate becomes the fruit or extract of all of the experiences acquired with the mental body. The Brahmavidya becomes the aureole body of victory, mentioned in the book The Dayspring of Youth. One thing is the mind as a mind, and another thing is the mind as an instrument. The great cosmic illuminations are the outcome of the momentous unions of Brahmavidya with the mental body. Thus, the soul united with its intimate is submerged within the great soul of the world, within Emerson's supersoul, and perceives all of the macrocosmic marvels. Yet, in order to achieve these marvels, the opening of the eye of Dagma is necessary. This eye is the intuition. The one who is already intuitive is so because he has a specially constructed mental body. The nucleus from such a mind is a circle of a resplendent violet color. Within the book Azuk, the mind, which is thus organized, is called Damiorphia. A Damiorphla person does not bend himself before the potencies of evil, neither is he a slave of Maya, illusion. Whosoever wants to study the book of Oriental wisdom entitled Azuk, has first of all to submit himself to great and terrible initiatic ordeals. I received this book from the hands of the authentic master of wisdom Count Humi, K.H. So, the system of selecting sensations and piercing the mind with controls and more mind controls every day only achieves to enslave the disciple to his animal mind and to his no less fatalistic intellect. All of this is nothing else but black magic. The only thing which is achieved with these tenebrous teachings is the total separation of the monad and The personality. Hence, the person ends up despising his monad and rendering cult to his guardian of the threshold, to his internal beast. One thing is the reasoning and another thing is the intuition. The reasoning only nourishes itself with the external sensorial perceptions by means of the senses it perceives or receives the impressions, and then produces the sensations. Thus, the reasoning ends up being negative and limited. The reasoning person believes that he can attain the truth through the struggle of antithesis, but this only divides the mind and incapacitates it to comprehend the truth. The intuitive person only knows how to listen to the voice of the silence. Thus, within his serene mind, the eternal truths of life are reflected with splendid beauty. The reasoning person converts his mind into a battlefield filled with prejudices, fears, anxieties, fanaticism, theories, and his conclusions are always favorable to him. Yet, such a turbulent lake can never reflect the sun of truth. The mind of the intuitive one serenely and silently flows very far away from the black struggle of antithesis and from the storm of exclusivity. The mind of the reasoner is like a ship that only knows how to change from harbors. From these harbors, which are called schools, theories, religions, political parties, etc., he acts and reacts with the already established precepts. A mind like this is a slave of the stagnant energies of life. Therefore, it ends up with complications and pain. The children of intuition, as rebellious, high-flying eagles, soar towards the sun of the great ineffable truths, free from fear, free from the longing of accumulation, free from sects, religions, schools, social prejudices, fanaticism of flags, anxieties, theories, intellectualism, hatred, selfishness, etc. The mind of the intuitive one serenely and silently flows as a delectable, crystalline fountain of resplendent beauty within the august thunder of thought. The mental body of the intuitive one is a marvelous vehicle of the intimate. The mind of such an intuitive one only acts under the direction of the intimate. From this action emerges right exertion, right thinking, and right feeling. The human being who only moves himself under the direction of his intimate in the world is a happy human being because he is far away from many types of complications and conflicts. In order to reach the ineffable summits of intuition, there is the necessity of integrally living in accordance with the wise teachings brought unto the earth by the divine Rabbi of Galilee. Therefore, the teachings of Christ are the teachings which leads us towards the ineffable summits of intuition. What is interesting is to exactly move ourselves in this physical world, in accordance with the wise teachings of the Master. What is important is to make the teachings of Christ become flesh and blood within ourselves. Christ did not come in order to found religions. Christ came in order to unite ourselves with the intimate, our eternal Father. The whole teachings of Christ have the great musical rhythm from the plane of the waves of life, which is the Buddhic or intuitive world. The mantra Aum Mani Padme Jum develops intuition when it is daily vocalized for 10 minutes. The practices of the teaching of Christ awake the chakra of the heart within ourselves and put in activity the Buddhic or intuitive body, which leads us towards wisdom and eternal happiness. Sexual magic forms part of the teachings, which Christ taught to his 70 disciples in secrecy. While we practice the Christic teachings, the ethereal body becomes totally reorganized, and its two superior ethers are increased in volume. Then, a certain center, which is formed within the head, descends into the heart and organizes a center for the intuition. A protector net is formed around the ethereal body when we do not waste our Christic force. This is how this body remains protected from the exterior currents. The physical body becomes more fine and also more strong, and even the face is transformed and gains beauty. The teachings of the solar logos operate upon all of our internal bodies, thus converting them into fine instruments of the intimate. What is important is to live these teachings in our practical life. Sadly, many people confuse the cosmic mind with the cosmic consciousness. One thing is the waves of the mind, and another is the waves of the consciousness. The mind is nourished by the consciousness. The cosmic consciousness reunites the affine waves of the mind. The trident symbolizes the triple set of forces of the transformation atoms of the mind. The mental body is not the I. The mental body is only an instrument of the I. Thus, to pretend to be enslaved by this material instrument is the breaking point of stubbornness. The mind of the intuitive one is an ineffable chalice filled with beauty. The mind of the intuitive one is the chalice of the Holy Grail saturated with the blood of the martyr of Golgotha. The mind of the intuitive one is the sacred cup of Pleroma, the sacred cup of Samadhi, the liquor of the gods. It is the soma, drank by the lords of the mind. It is the liquor of love, the Buddhic liquor, which is the wine of light already transmuted within the igneous vessel of the beautiful Helen. It is the cup of the immortal gods. Helen. Hail. Hail gods immortals. A toast for ye in this delectable chalice. And a toast for the Virgin of the Seven Portals. A toast for Helen of majestic face. And to her I chant my songs. Under the immortal colonnades of her serene temple. Helen, fill my cup with the wine of intuition. Helen, pour within my glass thy amphora of love, 10 minutes. Helen, console my painful heart. I want to drink the liquor of wisdom, even if it would add pain. I want to inebriate myself with light and poetry, and to awake in the arms of thy love. Beautiful Helen, I love thee. Thou art the burin of philosophy. Thou art the fire of the arcane. Thou art the amphora of wisdom, and the longed-for fiancé of the wise. The purple and the gold of ancient Ithaca I place before thy feet. O Helen, I place before thy feet the luxury of Atrida. O noble maiden, I place before thee the Greek vessels. O serene goddess, I place before thy feet all the ancient citadels. O beautiful Helen, Helen, fill my cup with the wine of intuition. Pour within my glass thy amphora of love. Chapter 9. The Lunar Period. The dawn of the lunar period began after the passing of the solar period's cosmic night. Then the solar universe condensed itself into ethereal matter, and life recapitulated all of the states of the past cosmic periods. The beginning of our ethereal Earth, which is called the Earth-Moon, the lunar period in all of its plenitude, was initiated after those processes of recapitulation. The human beings of the lunar epoch were short in stature, and their bodies were of ethereal matter. They built their houses underground, even though they were placing roofs on their homes that were similar to those which we place on our present houses. They negotiated, worked, and were enjoying themselves the same way as we do. Their urban populations were small and were connected as our own towns are, by avenues and roads. They also had automobiles similar to our cars. Their mountains were transparent like crystal and were of a very beautiful dark blue, which is like the blue color seen when looking at the mountains from a far-off distance, which is the ether. The whole of our ancient Earth was of that beautiful color. Volcanoes were in incessant eruption, and there was more water than in our present epoch. Immense lakes and vast seas were existing everywhere. In this lunar period, we see Beelzebub living in an enormous house, which was constructed beneath the ground. Here, within a large room, he was instructing his disciples. He was wearing a tunic of black and red stripes, a turban, and a cape of the same color. He was a black magician who had a tall and robust body. All of his black chellists, disciples, were profoundly venerating him. Beelzebub had 2 books, one book which he was reading to his disciples in order to instruct them, and the other that only he was studying in secrecy. There were a lot of proselytes among the human beings of the lunar period, which he conquered for black magic. The flora and fauna of that time was very different to our own. Here we clairvoyantly see plant minerals, that is to say, semi-plants, semi-minerals, semi-animal plants, etc. In other words, the 3 kingdoms of nature were not completely defined as in the present time, since in that epoch one kingdom was integrated with the other. Among the trees there was the marked tendency for the branches and leaves to make a concave shape, which caused them to resemble gigantic umbrellas. Through all existent things, this marked tendency of inclining downwards was nature's living scripture foreseen everywhere. Its process downwards was towards the condensation of our present physical earth. Nature is a living scripture everywhere, therefore, its designs are written based on this living scripture. On the other hand, we see in our present epoch, in this 20th century, a marked tendency of the human being to build very high buildings, and airplanes each time more and more rapid, etc. The branches of our actual trees do not want to incline downwards. Instead, they want to elevate themselves upwards to the sun. This is because our Earth has already reached its maximum material condensation, and now it yearns to elevate itself anew, to etherealize itself again. Really, the ether is inundating the air and etherealizing the Earth each time more and more. Thus, at the end of the great Aryan root race, the ether will be totally visible in the air. Then, all the creatures who live in the ether will share all of their activities with the human being. During the lunar period, the physical bodies of our present humanity reached a high degree in their perfection. We acquired the astral body during that period. We, the human beings of present times, were the animals of the lunar period. The angels and demons of ancient periods were floating in the ethereal atmosphere of our Earth moon. They were visible and tangible to the whole of that humanity. Those human beings perceived the archangels, archangeloi, or creatures of fire behind the erupted fire of volcanoes, and the lords of formation behind all of the existent forms. The children of life were regulating the vital functions of every existent thing, and the elemental creatures of the 5 elements of nature were coexisting with the human beings. The lords of wisdom were the ones who endowed us with the astral body. The lords of the personality were the ones who endowed us with personality, which at this present time is looked upon with much despise by the theosophists. The intimates, monad spirits, of this present humanity acquired the body of the human spirit, called the body of willpower, which Krishnamurti despises so much. Willpower is the power with which we can dominate our passions in order to convert ourselves into gods. When the law of the Gnostic alchemist is accomplished, the introduction of the virile member into the feminine vagina, and its withdrawal without spilling the semen, then the fire of passion is transmuted into astral light. This is how the astral body is strengthened and is filled with resplendent light. Therefore, all of the resplendent fruits of this marvelous astral organism are plunged within the body of willpower, which beautifies it. The fire of chastity is the fire of the Holy Spirit, and the body of the Holy Spirit is the body of willpower, also called abstract mind and causal body. Really, the body of the abstract mind is converted into the fire of Pentecost when inundated with fire by means of sexual magic. It utters ineffable things in all the languages of the world within the speechless human, who is inebriated with the Holy Spirit. It is what the Holy Gnostic Bible textually states. And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them cloven tongues like as of fire, and it sat upon each of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Ghost, and began to speak with other tongues, as the Spirit gave them utterance. The Acts of the Apostles, 2, 1-6. Jehovah, the Holy Spirit, guards the body of the Holy Spirit in ourselves. Jehovah was the highest initiate from the lunar epoch. Humanity was divided into angels and Lucifers when that great period ended, since many are called, but few are chosen. Max Handel and Rudolf Steiner affirm in their books that all of humanity will be saved. This is due to the ignorance of these authors. Verses 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28 of the 13th chapter of Luke textually say, Then said one unto him, Lord, are there few that be saved? And he said unto them, Strive to enter in at the strait gate, for many, I say unto you, will seek to enter in, and shall not be able. When once the master of the house is risen up, and hath shut to the door, and ye begin to stand without, and to knock at the door, saying, Lord, Lord, open unto us, and he shall answer, and say unto you, I know you not whence ye are. Then ye shall begin to say, We have eaten and drunk in thy presence, and thou hast taught in our streets. But he shall say, I tell you, I know you not whence ye are. Depart from me, all ye workers of iniquity. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, when ye shall see Abraham, and Isaac, and Jacob, and all of the prophets, in the kingdom of God, and you yourselves thrust out. When the cosmic night of the lunar period arrived, Jehovah and his angels, Lucifer and his demons, withdrew themselves from the cosmic scenario. Thus, the whole of nature entered into a profound repose. Chapter 10. The Terrestrial Period. When the cosmic night of the lunar period had passed, then the universe became condensed into a nebula, which is referred to by Laplace. It was the beginning of this physical-chemical epoch in which we presently live in. Nature recapitulated all of the former cosmic periods, which are allegorically described in Genesis. In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Genesis 1 verses 1-2. These were the times of Laplace's nebula, during which the earth recapitulated the Saturn epoch. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. Genesis 1, 3-4. Then, the molecules of the dark heat nebula entered into friction under the powerful impulse of the lost word of the Creator, and this nebula ignited, and became luminous. This was the Hyperborean epoch during which the solar atoms from the solar epoch entered into activity. Our Earth was an igneous globe filled with the wisdom of the fire, and filled with the light that the same fire produces. Thus, the archangels, who were the human beings of the solar epoch, were the beings who lived within this fiery globe. They expressed themselves with all of the plenitude of their wisdom. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day. Genesis 1, 5-8. Here the Bible keeps referring to the recapitulation of the solar period. Moisture was generated by the contact of this igneous globe with the surrounding interplanetary regions, which are cold. Enormous clouds were condensed which were gravitating back to the source of heat in the form of rain, and enormous seas and wells were formed which were incessantly boiling upon the fiery globe. Thus, the clouds separated the waters of heaven from the waters of the fiery globe, and God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear," and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called the seas, and God saw that it was good. Genesis 1, 9-10. The incessant boiling of the water wells surrounding the fiery core finally caused incrustation, and the dry land appeared upon the surface of the fiery globe. Thus, the word of the Creator was accomplished when he said, "And let the dry land appear," and God called the dry land earth. This is how the first terrestrial crust called Lemuria was formed. During this Lemurian epoch, the earth recapitulated the lunar period because the following law in life exists. Before initiating its new manifestations, nature has to recapitulate all of its former manifestations. Therefore, whosoever wants to objectively know all of the evolving processes of humanity has to observe the human fetus from its very conception. Within the maternal womb, the human fetus recapitulates the whole metamorphosis of the human body from its very ancient origins. The human body is nothing else but the scale of our igneous serpent. Thus, the solar universe is only the scale of the serpent of the solar logos of this solar system. When the serpent abandons the scale is disintegrated. This igneous serpent is the Kundalini, referred to in the chapter entitled The Staff of the Patriarchs. The mountain of Juratina. There exists in Colombia a very high mountain named the Juratina. This mountain is situated in the Vasquez territory, state of Bocaya. It is at the shore of the broad and profound waters of a river named Minero. The peasants say that the mountain is enchanted. They tell the most ancient traditions about it. They say that when it is going to rain they feel the noise of enormous, rocky boulders, which roll towards the abyss, and when they want rain, it is enough for them to light the mountain with fire, in order to have rain in abundance. These peasants do not care a bit about the commentaries of scientists regarding these matters. As Goethe has stated, every theory is gray, and only the tree of the golden fruits of life is green. These peasants narrate that the summit of this mountain is accessible through some high steps of rock, which were carved by very ancient hands. One of these peasants was telling the author of this current book how he was stopped by a rain of rocks thrown by invisible hands when drawing near to these millenary high steps. He was close to perishing under the rolling weight of a gigantic boulder, which almost squashed him. Another peasant explored the base of the mountain while following the course of the broad and profound waters of the river. He happened upon enormous boulders of granite, which were bathed by the boisterous waters of the river, and then he found a gigantic temple inlaid within the living rock. This peasant tried to enter into the temple through the central door, since this gigantic temple had 3 doors, but he found himself surrounded by many serpent skins. Consequently, he flew away terrified. Later on, he returned to this place in order to see the temple, yet he did not find anything. That temple disappeared as if it had been swallowed by those gigantic rocks. I, Samael Aun Weor, visited that temple in my astral body. The masters who dwell there welcomed me with their open arms. They lead me towards the interior of this monastery, which was illuminated by a 7-armed candelabra of massive gold, similar to the 7-armed candelabra of gold from the Temple of Solomon. I then received from them secret teachings. Theosophists believe that the masters are only in Tibet, and some of them would like to travel there in order to follow the Chelahood fellowship. Yet, the monasteries of the White Lodge are sprouting all over the world. In the East, the Mahatmas are called Nagas, that is to say, serpents. This is why all of the guardians from the sacred crypts of the Temple of Mysteries have the figure of gigantic serpents, who only allow initiates to enter. The poison of a snake kills, yet, we can arrive to the high initiation with this poison, which is a precious arcanum. Listen to me, initiate reader, the hiss of the snake is the base of life. This statement is not for all readers, therefore, he that hath an ear, let him hear. The inhabitants of Tierra Leona, state of Zulia, Venezuela, make the serpents flee when they pronounce the following mantras, OSI Osoa ASI. The vowels of these mantras are IAO, which are combined with the tremendous letter S, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding, understand. Even though grammarians do not say so, the letter S is also a vowel. We have to pronounce the 3 vowels IAO together with the priestess wife, while connected during sexual magic, because IAO is the name of our serpent. To clarify this chapter, we will say, the polar epoch corresponds to the mercurial intelligence of the serpent of the Logos, the heat. The Hyperborean epoch corresponds to the serpent's solar atoms, the fire. The Lemurian epoch corresponds to the lunar atoms of the serpent of the Logos, the humidity. Our Kundalini is also formed from solar and lunar atoms, and from a synthesis of omniscient atoms. Hence, the wisdom of 7 eternities is integrated within the serpent. The woman is the vestal of the temple, thus, the fire of the temple is lit by the vestal. In ancient times, the fire was guarded and lit by the vestals. This symbolizes that only the woman has the unique capability of lighting her husband's fire of Kundalini, which is the fire from our body, or our temple. The temple of the very high living God is our body and the fire of this temple is the Kundalini, which our vestal spouse lights by means of the same sexual contact, or sexual magic, as taught in the book The Perfect Matrimony, or The Door Entering into Initiation, and as well within this current book. In this present time, the Roman Catholic Church has totally lost the tradition. That is why we see that in this Roman Church the fire of the temple is lit by acolyte boys, an action that is not only an absurdity, but moreover, a very grave sacrilege and an insult to life itself. Continuing on, we say that the former cosmic periods actually exist within our seminal atoms, and it is merely enough to learn the technique of interior meditation in order to enter into their dominions. The entering door to those powerful atomic civilizations is in our sexual organs. The pralayas and manvantaras are happening within an always eternal instant. Past and future are joined within an eternal now. Time does not exist. It is the mind of the human being that is in charge of dividing the eternal now into past and future. The powerful Saturnine, solar and lunar civilizations still exist in the depth of our seminal system. We can enter into their dominions by means of interior meditation. The transition of the consciousness from one state into another is what we erroneously call time, but these states of consciousness are in a successive enchainment within an eternal now. Therefore, the human being must learn to always live in the present, liberating himself from all type of pompous theosophy, religious sectarianism, country and flag fanaticism, religions, intellectualism, yearning for accumulation, and general attachments. All of these hedonistic parrot cages are nothing else but a den of business and tyranny. We gain nothing from their gibberish, because they only achieve to fill us with prejudices and absurd fanaticism. The whole wisdom of all ages is within ourselves. Past and future are joined within an eternal now. All of the cosmic wisdom is within ourselves. The solar atoms initiate us into the wisdom of the fire. The lunar atoms initiate us into the very ancient Neptunian Amantine wisdom. The sacred fire awakens, and we convert ourselves into gods when these solar and lunar atoms make contact. During full moon nights, the lunar atoms make contact with the silver shield of our mental body. At that time we can receive the teachings of the lunar wisdom by means of meditation. 7 lunar ethereal currents exist. The civilization of our ancient Earth Moon intensely lives within them. The solar and lunar civilizations live within our interior worlds, and we can visit those civilizations by means of profound interior meditation. The solar and lunar civilizations, which intensely palpitate within our own internal worlds, initiate us into their profound truths. They take us to the great illumination by means of the awakening of the sacred fire of Kundalini through sexual magic. Our 7 chakras are 7 internal churches, and each one of these 7 churches contains the wisdom of a cosmic period. When we have opened the 7 seals from the 7 churches of the human book with the sword of the Kundalini, then the 7 churches deliver to us the whole cosmic wisdom of the 7 cosmic periods of the Mahamanvantara. This is how we become omniscient. The book of the Apocalypse, Revelation, says the following. And when he had opened the 7th seal, there were silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels, which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. Revelation 8, 1-4. Here, the Apocalypse refers to the book sealed with 7 seals, which is within our organism with its 7 churches. It clearly tells us that only the Lamb can open its 7 seals with the sword of the Kundalini. The Lamb is our interior angel, that is to say, our intimate. When the 7th seal is opened, the seal that is related with the Church of Laodicea, situated on the head, then the Lamb teaches that the 7 angels of the 7 trumpets are the same 7 angels of the 7 churches. The angel with the golden censer is our intimate, who triumphantly enters into the white hierarchy along with his diamond soul. He becomes another perfect one among the community of the elected ones. And the angel took the censer, and filled it with the fire of the altar, and cast it into the earth. And there were voices, and thundering, and lightnings, and an earthquake. Revelation 8:5. Here the Apocalypse tells us that when we have opened the 7th seal with the sword of the Kundalini, then the 7 churches open their doors for us, and teach us the wisdom of the 7 great terrestrial periods, which correspond to the 7 great cosmic periods. The 8th chapter of the Apocalypse continues referring to the 7 angels, stating that when they consecutively sound their respective trumpets, the great cosmic events are successively occurring. These 7 angels are the angels of our 7 planets, who direct the 7 chakras of our organism, and also the 7 terrestrial epochs. Therefore, the 7 terrestrial epochs are directed by 7 cosmic hierarchies, and the whole wisdom of all of these 7 epochs is within our 7 chakras. Our terrestrial period has 7 epochs. And I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head, and his face was as it were the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. And he had in his hand a little book open, and he set his right foot upon the sea, and his left foot on the earth. And cried with a loud voice, as when a lion roareth, and when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. Revelation 10, 1-3. This angel is the hierarch of the 7th epoch. The rainbow symbolizes our present terrestrial period, which started with the rainbow, Genesis 9 verses 12-13. This happened in Atlantis, because Lemuria was a recapitulation of the lunar period. The little book that the angel had in his hand is the book of human evolution. It is the book sealed with 7 seals, yet it is the book already without seals. It is the human organism of the one who has already opened the 7 seals. It is the body of the master. It is the cosmic wisdom of the one who has already reached deep self-realization, and cried with a loud voice, as when a lion roareth. And when he had cried, 7 thunders uttered their voices. Revelation 10:3. Here the Apocalypse tells us about the lost word, about the sacred syllable that the 7 thunders of the 7 chakras uttered with their voices. These voices are the 7 notes of the lost word. The sacred syllable opens the 7 chakras, and so each chakra has its own keynote. He that has an ear, let him hear. Here is wisdom. Let him that has understanding understand. The lost word shall be found in the 7th epoch. And when the 7 thunders had uttered their voices, I was about to write, and I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Seal up those things which the 7 thunders uttered, and write them not. Revelation 10:4. Each note of the lost word encloses tremendous unutterable secrets. Each note of the lost word is the keynote of a terrestrial epoch. Thus, the keynote of the Egyptian civilization is one note, and another is the keynote of the Hindustani civilization, and so forth successively. In the days of the 7th epoch, the lost word shall totally fulfill the mystery of the kingdom of God. The Swedish mystic philosopher Swedenborg said the following when referring to the lost word: search for it in China, and maybe you will find it in the Great Tartar. The black magicians of Sodom use the mantra Mathra, they pronounce it Masra, for their demonic goals. They assert to their disciples that Mathra is the lost word, yet, in reality, this word is the name of a temple of black magic of ancient Atlantis, and at the same time a mantra for black magic. Thus, Mathra is not the lost word. In India, the Arahats were persecuted because they were possessing the sacred syllable. In China, the disciples of Tathagata possessed the lost word. In Tibet, the lost word is very well protected, for here is where the Mahachon abides. The lost word shall be found in the 7th epoch. But in the days of the voice of the 7th angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he had declared to his servants the prophets. And swear by him that liveth for ever and ever, who created heaven, and the things that therein are, and the earth, and the things that therein are, and the sea, and the things that are therein, that there should be time no longer. Revelation 10:7-6. The initiate, who is already united with his intimate, is liberated from the illusion of time, because past and future are joined within an eternal now. Each one of the 7 terrestrial epochs finishes with a great cataclysm, which is symbolically described in the Apocalypse in the following way. And the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon earth, and the 3rd part of the trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. Revelation 8:7. This was the first cataclysm of the first epoch. And the 2nd angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the 3rd part of the sea became blood, and the 3rd part of the creatures which were in the sea, and had life, died, and the 3rd part of the ships were destroyed. Revelation 8:8-9. This was the end of the 2nd epoch. And the 3rd angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the 3rd part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the 3rd part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters, because they were made bitter. Revelation 8:10-11. This was the end of the 3rd epoch. And the 4th angel sounded, and the 3rd part of the sun was smitten, and the 3rd part of the moon, and the 3rd part of the stars, so as the 3rd part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a 3rd part of it, and the night likewise. Revelation 8:12. This was the end of the 4th epoch. And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. Revelation 9:1-2. The abyss is the Avicii, which is a submerged plane of consciousness, where only the weeping and gnashing of teeth are heard. Here is where the souls who have horns on their forehead enter. The horns on the forehead are the mark of the beast. In this present times, the abyss is open and millions of demonic souls are entering into the abyss. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Revelation 9:11. We are in the epoch of wars because they are necessary, since war produces millions of dead. Thus, the souls who have horns on their forehead enter into the abyss. Any clairvoyant can see the demonic souls. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, Loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. Revelation 9:13-15. This will be the sixth epoch. In that epoch the human demons will be taken into the abyss again, after a very good opportunity for progress has been given to them. And the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven, saying, The kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord, and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Revelation 11:15. In those future times, the earth will be more ethereal, and only the human beings who have reached the angelical state will live in it, because the millions of demonic souls will definitively go into the abyss, where they will be disintegrated throughout the ages. This is the second death. Chapter 11. Lemuria. And Jehovah Elohim planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Genesis 2:8. There has been much discussion regarding the topic of the terrestrial paradise. Max Handel sustained that the terrestrial paradise is the astral light, yet he did not inquire into what the word terrestrial signifies. Really, this paradise existed and was the continent of Lemuria, which was situated in the Pacific Ocean. It was the first dry land that existed in the world. The temperature during that time was extremely warm. But there went up a mist from the earth, and watered the whole face of the ground. Genesis 2:6. The very intense heat together with the water mist was creating a foggy atmosphere. Consequently, human beings were breathing through galls like fish. So Elohim created man in his own image, in the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. Genesis 1:27. The human beings of the polar epoch, the Hyperborean epoch, and even in the beginning of the Lemurian epoch were hermaphrodites. They reproduced themselves as hermaphrodite microbes reproduce themselves. In the earliest times of Lemuria, there was almost no differentiation between the human species and the animal species. Yet, after 150,000 years of evolution, the Lemurians reached a very grand degree of civilization, which we, the Aryans, are still very far from reaching. It was the age of gold, it was the age of the Titans. It was the delectable time of Arcadia, a time in which what is mine and what is yours did not exist, because everything belonged to everybody. It was the time in which the rivers were pouring forth milk and honey. The imagination of the human being was an ineffable mirror, in which the panorama of the starry heavens of Urania was solemnly reflected. The human being knew that his life was the life of the gods. The one who knew how to play the lyre was shaking the divine fields with his delectable melodies. The artist who was handling the brush inspired himself with the eternal wisdom. He gave to his delicate sculptures the tremendous majesty of God. Oh, the epoch of the Titans! It was an epoch in which the rivers were pouring forth milk and honey. The Lemurians were of a high stature, and they had a broad forehead. They wore symbolic tunics, which were white in the front and black in the back. They had flying ships and boats propelled by atomic energy. The lighting system used in the Lemurian structures was made from nuclear energy. They reached a very high degree of culture. Such were the times of Arcadia. The human being knew how to listen to the voice of the gods through the seven vowels of nature. The seven vowels I, E, O, U, A, M, S were resounding in the Lemurian bodies with all of the ineffable music of the accentuated rhythms of the fire. The Gnostic disciple must vocalize for 1 hour daily the vowels in the described written order. Each vowel must be prolonged as follows, emptying the lungs with each intonation. The letter I makes the pituitary and the pineal glands to vibrate, thus, the human being becomes clairvoyant. The letter E makes the thyroid gland to vibrate, thus the human being becomes clairaudient. The letter O makes the chakra of the heart to vibrate, thus the human being becomes intuitive. The letter U awakes the solar plexus, tip of the stomach, thus the human being awakes telepathy. The letter A makes the chakra of the lungs to vibrate, thus the human being acquires the power of remembering his past lives. The vowels M and S efficiently help in the development of all of the occult powers. Therefore, 1 hour of daily vocalization is more worthy than reading 1,000,000 books of Oriental theosophy. The body of the Lemurians was a miraculous harp, where the 7 vowels of nature were sounding with the tremendous euphoria of the cosmos. When night was arriving, all of the human beings were falling asleep as innocent creatures within the cradle of Mother Nature. They were lulled with the very sweet and moving chant of the gods. Thus, when the dawn was rising, the sun was bringing diaphanous contentment and not tenebrous grief. Oh, the epoch of the Titans! Those were the times in which the rivers were pouring forth milk and honey. The matrimonies of Arcadia were Gnostic matrimonies. Then, the human beings were performing the sexual magic under the commands of the Elohim, and as a sacrifice on the altar of matrimony, in order to provide bodies to the souls who needed to reincarnate. Fornication was completely unknown, and there was no pain in giving birth. Throughout many thousands of years, Lemuria was sinking within the boisterous waves of the Pacific Ocean,